Good evening, 49er faithful. Welcome to another episode of the live 49ers Mailbag. Excited to get to your questions. As always, we have the previously submitted questions that came in via Gmail, via Twitter, as I put out the request this morning for 49ers related questions. But if you didn't get a question, all you got to do is put it into the chat and I will answer it live here on the program. If you are putting it into the chat, do me a favor, hit the @Rob or @RobShoe. Type that in to begin your question so that I know you're talking to me and not just having a dialogue over there amongst yourselves in the chat. Very excited to get into today's topics. It is going to be an off-season focused, as you would expect, mailbag for the San Francisco 49ers. Looking at who we got here in the comments already. Sean951 Niners coming in. Bang, bang, Niner gang. And Silent Seth coming in. Let's go. Just got back from surgery and Rob is going live. Perfect timing. Silent Seth, I hope that it was a minor surgery. I hope that you are recovering well. And I hope that you've got some good painkillers going on so that what I say is either hilariously funny or obscure or doesn't make any sense to you because, the painkillers have just got you on another level. I hope you're doing well is what I mean to say there. Emmanuel coming in. Shoo. Karthik, who has a question in the mailbag today. Karthik, I got you. Don't you worry. @Rob, what's up, my guy? How are you doing? I am doing okay. I'm doing better now that I am here interacting with fellow 49er faithful. E. Kim. Hi, Rob. Hello, E. Kim. Nice to see you. Spy Nick, Danger coming in. Go Niners. Yes, indeed. Raphael 562 Niners. Hi, Rob. And everyone coming in from one of our sneakerheads here on the channel. And Spy Nick doing the good work early, asking for those likes. I'll tell you what. If you enjoy the content, I do ask that you like it because during these off-season programs, it's hard to get those views, right? People aren't focused on the Niners right now. They're taking a little breather, but I am focused on the San Francisco 49ers. No question about it. Caligula also doing the people's work, pushing the like button. Also a sneakerhead here on the channel. All right, I am going to get into the previously submitted questions, but as I said just a moment ago, if you have a live question that you want to ask here in the chat, drop it in there. Just hit @Rob or @RobShoe. Type that in before your question so I know that you're talking to me. I will come back and get to those in just 1 second. This first question came in from Tom J via Gmail. First of all, Tom, it was a phenomenal email that he sent over. I really appreciated the thorough nature with which he approached the topic. And as always, I have to abbreviate some of these questions, but I will read out the question in its entirety. So here's the abbreviated version sent in by Tom. Is the Niners' approach to the draft too driven by money, focusing on cap management over talent? I'm worried they will repeat that mistake this year and miss out on Petrie or Maffey. I don't know if I'm pronouncing either one of those potential rookies correctly. One is the safety coming out of Baylor, and then the other is an edge rusher coming out of Minnesota. Both are intriguing prospects, though. The email was much more lengthy and explained a whole lot. So I'm going to get into that. I'm going to read the original question and some of the content of the email here. This coming in from Tom. Is the Niners' approach to the draft too driven by money? Focusing on cap management over talent is what led to drafting Mike McGlinchey to replace Trent Brown over the best possible available talent, which in his opinion was Derwin James at the time. I'm worried they will repeat that mistake this year and miss out on Petrie and Maffey, sign offensive linemen, draft playmakers. Some of the content to the email listed out my concern about the draft. The last time the Niners were faced with financial pressure, they used the draft as a cap management tool. Trent Brown wanted too much money. They dealt him for a third rounder, and they drafted McGlinchey to replace him. Problem being, all well and good for the cap management, but what about best available talent? I'm a big believer in drafting impact playmakers. Before that draft, I was screaming for Derwin James. This year, I fear a repeat. Petrie, safety out of Baylor, and Maffey, the Minnesota edge, are, in my opinion, the best available impact players at the first two picks. But for cap management, they may decide ahead of time to draft offensive line, which they are terrible at. Use free agency to cover your weakness. Sign veteran O-linemen. Do not draft them. Then use what the draft gives you. This one is packed with edge rushers, but can run dry by late third round. The need at offensive line is made worse by draft fans who invariably all are offensive line honks. Jesse had a call-in mock draft. The first three people all wanted to draft O-lineman. Third guy reached multiple rounds for the Notre Dame center after the second pick was an undersized guard who probably has to go center. Ugh. That was a long-winded contribution, but I thought it was so thorough, I wanted to make sure to bring it all to the table because I appreciated what Tom sent over. And I think it was very well thought out, right? It was a very succinct argument. I like both of those players that he is listing as potential targets. To me, they both fit. But when I approach this, what I want to say is that I agree with what Tom is saying here. I agree with the idea that the San Francisco 49ers, in that instance, did attempt to allocate their resources in a way that saved them some cash, that allowed them to use a draft pick to fill a position where they could have signed someone to a bigger contract. Now, I'm not going to go back and rewrite history and claim that they should have signed Trent Brown to a long-term deal. I don't know that that's necessarily the answer. But what I do feel is true is that the Niners at times pigeonhole themselves into what their draft pick is going to be, as opposed to targeting an impact player like these two. When I look at these two in particular, I'm not wild about using the first pick on a safety. I think that there's going to be value in free agency to replace Jaquiski Tartt. I think potentially you can even bring back Jaquiski Tartt, but I get that potentially being a need after free agency if the 49ers do not address them. The Minnesota edge, Maffey, that one I am all over. To me, that's phenomenal. When I look at some of the reports coming out about him, you're talking about a guy that was originally viewed to come off of the board, actually currently viewed by Todd McShay to come off the board early day 2. Todd McShay says, the more I watch this guy, the more I love him. He's not polished. He has some work that he has to do at the next level, but he's going to get with an NFL coaching staff, and I think this guy's going to skyrocket. I think he's going to be one of the best edge rushers in what is starting out to be one of the best edge rusher classes we've had in a decade. But Maffey just continues to show up. The Senior Bowl was an excellent exclamation point on a great week that he had. So he is 33-inch long arms, 6'4", 258 pounds, and again, on the fringe of the first round. So the Niners may need to jump up in order to get him. I would much rather target that and go for things where I can find value like offensive linemen in free agency. I will get to my priorities as to what position I would go for in free agency and what I would draft in a little bit. But I wanted to bring up Tom's question to state that I agree. The Niners do at times pursue a draft strategy that is too clever. They're attempting to save some cap dollars. And while that's important this offseason, you always want to go for the best available talent in your allocation of resources. And I think for the 49ers this year in particular, it is going after that edge class. Man, I got a lot of comments that I got to get to. Be patient with me. Hit the @Rob Shoe if you are talking to me. That way I can skip past the comments that are not talking to me. All right, E. Kim coming in @Rob. I see Lakin getting paid $15 million by another team. Do you see that too, Rob? No way. If Lakin gets $15 million, man, goodbye, Lakin, and best to you. Man, I can't see the Niners matching that. I'm not sure that I see that price tag being reached for Lakin on this one. I think he's viewed as the second or third best available guard. I think Brandon Scherf is looked at as above Lakin Tomlinson in this one. I could be mistaken about that. I was just looking through PFF's top 100 or 200 available free agents, and I know for a fact that they did not list Lakin as the top. I don't think the Niners go above $10 million for Lakin. So if it gets to 15, I do think Laken is gone, and that would be unfortunate in my book. He's our second priority free agent in my mind. Rob Smith coming in at Rob Shoe. Hi, Rob. Good to see you. Good to see you too, Rob. Great name. That Niner guy coming in at Rob Shoe. Rob, what's up, buddy? Getting into a little draft content. I know that's your wheelhouse, that Niner guy. All right, E. Kim coming back in at Rob. The biggest priority of this offseason is gaining salary cap space. I think that's partially true. I would list that with re-signing their own players, man. Yes. Karthik coming in to celebrate. Rob, you are almost at 6,000 subscribers. Man, that's time for celebration. Come on. All right, Karthik. Well, hopefully we get there soon. I mean, it is dragged on in the offseason. Certainly getting from 4,000 to 5,000 subscribers came a lot quicker than 5 to 6 because the end of the season came. Emmanuel coming in at Rob. No question. Just a reminder for the daily DJ Jones barbecue sauce show up. You know that's what's up. DJ Jones is the number one priority for me in free agency. So I got to have that at the ready. I got to have that. Ooh, we've got some disagreement. 49ers amateur draft scout saying Maffey is not that great. I haven't looked at the film yet. I've just been reading up on him. I'm interested to know. Rob Smith at Rob Shoe, in your opinion, who is the one free agent that the 49ers can least afford to lose? Well, I just said he was the number one priority, but I don't know if that angle changes it. Someone that we can least afford to lose. Because of the uncertainty at offensive line, I think I have to flip that to Laken Tomlinson because of the idea that potentially 4 out of the 5 spots are in play for the San Francisco 49ers. Laken Tomlinson, free agent. Daniel Brunskill, free agent. Alex Mack may consider retirement. Mike McGlinchey coming off of a frickin' quad tear. So because of the idea that you may have turnover across 4/5 of your offensive line, I think locking down that left side becomes a bigger priority because of it. But it doesn't change my desire, yes, Emmanuel, to re-sign DJ Jones because I want to keep blasting the barbecue sauce. You know that's the reality. Joe Stahl just coming in to say what's up. Fellow sneakerhead, what's up? All right, Swan Song in here with a question at Rob Shoe. Do you think Kirk Cousins joins the 49ers quarterback carousel? Do you think the 49ers Super Bowl odds get better if they had Kirk as quarterback? No, I do not think that Kirk Cousins joins the San Francisco 49ers. I think that ship has sailed. However, I would say yes, if Kirk Cousins were to miraculously join the San Francisco 49ers without them having to pay an exorbitant amount of money or give up considerable draft assets in this year's class, yeah, I would think that those Super Bowl odds would go up. I mean, the 49ers are already the 4th best in Super Bowl odds for 2022, which seems a little bit odd given some of the uncertainty, but it's a talented, deep roster, and I'm here for it. All right, Silent Seth at Rob Shoe. If somehow we get that 11th pick for Jimmy, who would you get with it? Man, that's a pipe dream right now. Getting the Washington Commanders 11th pick. Again, an executive for the Washington Football Commanders, I guess it's just the Washington Commanders, came out and said that they would feel justified, something along those lines. They would feel justified in giving up that first round pick because of how slim pickings it is for quarterbacks this go round with the rookie class and available free agents beyond those elite candidates. I don't have someone in mind for that 11th pick because I just don't think we're going to get it. That Niner guy coming in saying, at Rob Shoe, the name's right. Great question. Niners have, I got the names right. That's fantastic. Great question. Niners have historically done this. Good news on the guys. They won't be in the first possibility. They won't be in the first, possibly. Kyle will not let cheaper studs. The window is open. I think there were a couple of missing words in that one, but I get the message there. I got it. Spy Nick Danger at Rob Shoe. Was our O-line's inability to run against the Rams defense and pass protect the reason we lost this season? I think we left a lot of plays on the table in that Rams game. And without getting into it specifically, no, I would not lay it all at the feet of the offensive line. I think they were the most gassed at that point. They were the most affected by the road games that the 49ers had gone on, that road journey. Tom Jensen coming in. This was the man who had the question. Thanks very much for sharing my email, Rob. Pleasure to speak with you, and thanks for answering my question. Reed in free agency works, but Petra is more skilled, in my opinion. As I read up on him, I mean, that was fascinating to me. If the 49ers gain an additional second-round pick or potentially a first-round pick for Jimmy Garoppolo, I could see the 49ers going after both of those as impact players. Saving some money on the safety side of things, and then adding the edge rusher, which is much needed, in my humble opinion. I think it's entirely possible the Niners get another second-round pick and end up taking both of those positions. All right, looking for any more of those. Here we go. Karthik at Rob. Lakin should be getting paid $7 to $10 million. Thoughts? That's about where I have it put. I would say that I expect Lakin to be in the $9.5 million range if the Niners sign him, and the $10+ million range if the Niners can't afford him. Ekim pointing out, Roger Saffold got $10 million a season 2 years ago in free agency, hence the reason he went higher on that free agent price. And that's fair. Someone, a guard, may get paid over 10 mil. I'm just not confident in that one. Not confident enough to say it. Sean 951 Niners at Rob Shoe. 49ers need to re-sign him, and he needs the 49ers if he wants to stay relevant. Williams and he are a great tandem. We must be talking about Laken Tomlinson. And we need continuity for Lance or Aaron Rodgers from the blind side. In case you don't know, Sean 951 Niners has predicted the Niners pull off a phenomenal trade or an unprecedented trade, I should say, for Aaron Rodgers, bringing him in, hence the reason that Sean 951 mentions A-Rod in that answer. Melvin coming in at Rob. Do you think if the Niners get a second for Jimmy that they will use the pick for a cornerback, or do you think they'll go cornerback through free agency? I'm going to hit that in a little bit, but the short answer, I think they go cornerback through free agency. Yes. All right, let us see what else we want to bring in. Batman29 at Rob, you deserve at least 10K followers because of your great camera and audio setup. Batman, I appreciate that. I mean, also the talent, right? Also what I say and how I say it. And I'm kidding. I would take it just for the camera, just for whatever. Let's get this thing to 10,000 subscribers. Let's do it. All right, one more comment, and then I'm going back to the previously submitted ones. So keep putting those comments into the chat with @Rob or @RobShoe, as Niners Sickness Podcast did here. @RobShoe, will the 49ers get a number one for Jimmy? Not because he's worth it, but because there is a top need for a good quarterback this offseason. Supply and demand. I don't think so. I don't think the Niners get a first in return for Jimmy unless they throw in one of their picks to sweeten the deal and then get that first in return. Or get a first rounder, but in next year's draft where it is not compensatory, but you know what I mean, where it is contingent upon something else, that it is contingent upon him hitting X% of games started or that team making the playoffs. And at that point, it may kick up to a 1. But my gut says second rounder. But I agree, supply and demand will absolutely dictate that. All right, getting into a previously submitted question, this one coming in from Karthik. What do you think about Tom Brady coming to the Bay? Again, this one I had to shorten. Karthik typed this out. What do you think about Tom Brady coming to the Bay, knowing he grew up there and wanting to be a starter for the Niners, while Trey Lance gets his job as a spectator on the sidelines for a second straight year, gaining better, knowledgeable experience? Here's the catch. Trey was sitting behind Jimmy G, and now he'll be sitting behind the GOAT, a legend. Replica of Jimmy G. I'm not sure if that's meant to mean that Tom's a replica of Jimmy G. But anyway, I digress. This is what a win-now team with all the key components needs to make another Super Bowl run like this year. Your thoughts, Rob. Sources. Brady also said he wanted to play for the Niners as his last NFL team in his 20-year legendary career. Again, that coming in from Karthik. I will speak to this. I am all about storybook endings. I am all about storylines. I love it when those things come together. But I will firmly state here and now that I don't think that this happens. I put it at a 1% chance of happening. 1 in 100 chance of happening. Not much of a chance. But I will say this. If Tom Brady decides he still wants to play, if that happens first, Tom comes out and says, you know what? I spoke too soon. I don't want to retire. I'm not done yet. As soon as he says those words, the number jumps to 50% for me. Then at that point, it's 50-50 odds because I believe Tom could make this happen. I believe that the Bucs would not want to get into a situation where they're tarnishing the legend of the GOAT. My guess is that Tom Brady and the Glazer family quite literally talked about his legacy before he signed with the organization and before this retirement, and that as a part of coming to their organization, the Glazer family agreed, Tom, we understand that your legacy is paramount to you. We will not do anything that tarnishes that legacy. So I think that would give them the freedom to trade him away without the type of animosity that you see between Green Bay and Aaron Rodgers, for example. So right now, 1 in 100. Tom says he wants to play. I think the Niners are by far the favorite. All right, going on. This was 2 questions, 2 different people, basically the same question. So I put it in together. First question was from Effin coming in. What do you prioritize in free agency versus the draft? Second question by Jose. Which position should be the priorities in this year's draft? Very similar questions, so I lumped them together to answer them both at the same time. I'm coming back to the comments in just a minute to answer your live questions, but let me get into this. I think that, the basic strategy of best player available in the draft, I totally am on board with Tom, the first individual I read that question from. I prefer to draft playmaking positions early, high impact players. As far as free agent veterans, I like to sign free agent veterans in areas that you may not be as adept in developing talent or areas where you want to have a savvy veteran coming in, where being a savvy veteran might be beneficial to your play on the field. So I would argue that the Niners should prioritize veteran free agents for offensive line, where they have not shown an ability to really develop players. You could argue Laken Tomlinson, but he was on his second contract when he was traded. Not second. He was in his 3rd or 4th year when he was traded to the San Francisco 49ers, but he was a first-round talent. They did get the most out of him, but I think other than that, it's hard to find concrete examples of the Niners consistently developing O-line. And then secondary. Secondary to me is a position where savviness, veteran savviness, is an additional skill set, whether it's for a safety, outside corner, nickel. You see guys who understand the game playing at a faster speed, even if physically speaking, they may not be as fast as the young Bucks. The Niners, though, have shown themselves to be very adept at developing defensive line and linebacker. Somewhat less so with wide receiver and tight end. So I would look at position groups as a whole. So examples of development, Debo and Ayuk, right? Like kind of develop those. Juwan, maybe. George, maybe, but not really any other tight ends, not very many wide receivers. So hit or miss in those. And then another area that I would look at if I were the San Francisco 49ers would be backup quarterback. And I would think to myself, I probably want a savvy veteran in that regard. I probably want to spend a little bit of money to bring in a free agent to back up Lance so that he can mentor Lance, so that he can add something to that room. Again, that's the way in which I would explore these options of whether I'm going to draft or bring in a free agent for a particular need on the team. It is all, to me, very, very dependent on the 49ers' ability to re-sign their own players. That is top priority number 1 for me, bringing back as many of their own guys as possible. If I'm listing out the positions I would draft for versus the positions I would spend in free agency, here's the breakdown. Draft, edge rusher. Interior O-line, I'm thinking Mac replacement here. I'm talking an interior guard that can then shift to center next year when Mac retires. In this, I'm assuming Mac plays one more season. To me, that's the best way to replace the center. You get someone a full year on the team. You get them to develop at that guard spot, either as a starter or as a backup in that regard, and then transition to center. You just don't see many centers hitting the market. And when they do tend to get paid pretty handsomely. And I don't know that the Niners can prioritize bringing back Laken Tomlinson and a free agent center. So I would go draft in that one. Speed wide receiver / return man. That to me, another prime thing to address within the draft later on, 6th or 7th round. The Niners have 3 7th rounders in this upcoming draft. Safety. I do think that is one that the Niners can add some depth, but I also think it's one that they can potentially hit in free agency. I'll get to that in a second. And then cornerback. I say this as draft and free agency because I think the Niners are going to need to bring in multiple players. They need someone capable of competing for one of the starting spots on the outside, and they need to replace K'Wan Williams at that slot. And then I believe the Niners need to upgrade their third down running back. I would label this as Raheem Mostert insurance. I would prefer to bring back Raheem Mostert. I think he would automatically be your third down back over JaMychal Hasty. But I think there's a chance the Niners can't bring back Mostert. And so you're going to have to bring in someone as that third down back, in particular, if you do not re-sign JaMychal Hasty. The positions for free agency, interior offensive line. This is where I address the other guard spot, the right guard spot. I'm looking to bring in a veteran. I am hoping that we can re-sign Laken Tomlinson. That may be a lot to ask. It may be one or the other. If I've got to choose, I'm re-signing Laken Tomlinson. A veteran corner, either nickel or outside. I think you address one of the corner needs in free agency and one in the draft. That would be my particular preference. And then safety. I believe that there are 7 starting caliber safeties out on the market. It's a long list, and that is a depressed position when it comes to free agency in the last few years. I love the candidate that has been laid out. I love the idea of prioritizing some depth at safety. I am pleased to see that Tavarius Moore does revert to the 4th year of his contract because of the injury. It's unfortunate for Tavarius, but he is actually on the 49ers roster already. So you have a very athletic individual who's going to be competing for that spot. I do think that maybe you can make a play at one of these veteran safeties. Eric Reed would be an interesting choice that got thrown out there already. And then the last position I would go for free agency, backup quarterback. Again, I want that veteran savvy. I'm willing to pay a little bit more to get a veteran backup safety, quarterback. I want Tyrod Taylor, and I realize he's probably going to be $10 million plus for a single year. I think it's worth it. I really do think it's worth it. So to sum all that up, I am all about value. The salary cap, the draft rules set up the framework, but it is all about asset allocation within that, and the Niners have some flexibility. All right, I am getting back into your comments over there. Again, type out @Rob or @RobShoe so that I know you are talking to me when you come into the comments. Jay Tan coming in. @Rob, do you agree with Richard Sherman? Matthew Stafford is not a Hall of Famer. I have that question coming up. Someone submitted it earlier. Who put that one in? That was Garrett. Garrett put in the question about Matthew Stafford with regard to Richard Sherman. I'll get to it in just a minute. We've got Joe Stoll with the super chat coming in. When are you going to open that DJ sauce? I have multiple bottles. This one is display only, right? The problem is you open it and then it begins to slowly but surely. Right now, I've got until June of 2022 before I need to open it. So maybe in June, when it's about to expire, I will do a show where it is me using the barbecue sauce before it expires and enjoying some delicious barbecue. But for right now, it is a prop. All right, Karthik coming in at Rob. The NFL is the real deal, not freaking college. That is true. That is true. That Niner guy explaining his earlier comment ran out of characters. I know that feeling. That is annoying. I don't know why they limit the characters so badly. I guess they probably do it for a good reason, because otherwise the chat would be full with term papers in there. Niners Sickness Podcast at Rob Shue. Should the 49ers go with need or best player with their first pick? I am always about best player. Not always. There's exceptions to every rule. I think that if you're within a couple of spots that you can jump for a need, again, I believe that this is a rich draft class when it comes to edge rushers. I think the Niners need is there. So if there's a couple of spots difference between where I have them on the board and that being a player of need at a position that I covet, I might jump for that. But typically, when I am in my own mock drafts and my own fantasy drafts, I'm taking best player available. Swanson thinking Justin Reed going to be going for like $7 million a year. I think the safety market, there's a lot of folks out there. That's just my take on it. I think it gets flat. Somebody is left without a chair. Luke Walsh coming in at Rob Shue. Any chance of a surprise Buckner type trade justified by the combo benefit of a pick and cap savings? I'm thinking of that. I'm thinking if that happened, it would be next year. Yeah, I don't see anything on the horizon this year. I've explored that with mental gymnastics, attempting to think of a player that could get traded. The best name I've come up with of possible trade candidates for the San Francisco 49ers would be Dre Greenlaw in my book. You've got a glut of linebackers. Alshire, to me, is the more premium of the two, the one that you want to commit to long-term. Dre Greenlaw, therefore, is most likely headed out the door next offseason, and you wouldn't get anything in return for him, save for potentially a compensatory draft pick in the 7th round. So you could see the Niners attempting to get a 6th rounder out of it in this year's draft instead of getting a 7th rounder in next year's draft. But to me, there aren't that many players that could get traded. Niner Status with an interesting one, asking, at Rob, how did you become a 49er fan? Some of you may have already heard this, so I'll keep it short. But my family moved from the East Coast. I was born about 20 minutes outside of Boston, Massachusetts. Packed the car and have it yard. And we moved in just 1985, 1986-ish, right after the 85 Super Bowl, or right about the time of the 85 Super Bowl. So I was not a big football fan. I was, 7 years old at the time, but we moved to the Bay Area. From the East Coast to the West Coast. All my friends, the kids in my school in 3rd grade were like, you're just going to surf all the time now that you live in California, and like, it's going to be totally radical, dude. And it was not that. I got to the Bay and we lived on the peninsula. I didn't see anybody surfing for a long ass time. But what I did see was Joe Montana and Jerry Rice and John Taylor and Ronnie Lott and Tom Rathman and Roger Craig, you name it. And I watched him. My dad started getting tickets to go to Niners games from a guy that he worked with right away. And he started taking my brother and I to games in the mid-'80s. And then he got season tickets. And then we started going to every game. And then my brother went away to college, and it was just my dad and I. And so a lot of my early childhood memories, especially my fondest memories of me and my father, and me and my brother, are surrounded by memories of the San Francisco 49ers of the 80s and 90s. And so it was hard not to fall in love with that team. It was hard not to instantly become a fan, and I did. And I have been a diehard 49er fan ever since. I appreciate you asking that question. It's fun to talk about. Sean 951 Niners at Rob Shue. If Washington wants Jimmy, then they need to throw the number 1 at us. It's in the air now, so that's it. I like the optimism, Sean, and I hope that you're right. I mean, somebody floated it out there. I'm just not sure. That they were real about that. To me, it seems like a stretch. All right, looking for more at Rob. Ronnie Niner. I have a question from Ronnie Niner coming in later. I think it's a little bit of a funny one, but we'll hit it. At Rob, if they get Brady, then they are admitting they royally screwed up, panicked with the Trey pick, and now Jed may fire them if it doesn't work out. I would disagree. I don't think that it concedes any of that. I think that it would just be, hey, you got another opportunity at Tom Brady. He illustrated that his skill set hasn't fallen off in the way that you feared it had his last year with the Patriots. And you got another opportunity to sign him, and you considered it. I see it as a 1 in 100 chance. Rob Smith, sneakerhead here on the channel, coming in at Rob Shoe. What do you think the chances are that the team does not sign Debo or Bosa to long-term deals this offseason, but instead uses the franchise tag on Debo and fifth-year option on Bosa? Great question, Rob. I believe that it's a fairly minimal chance of either not getting signed. I think that there's a pretty big chance of one of the two not getting signed, and I think it's Bosa. I think that there's a reasonable, like a 50-50 shot that they use the fifth-year option on Bosa and they negotiate with his camp next offseason. I believe after what they said about Debo and about after Debo's season, what he put on the line, if they don't take care of him, I don't think Debo would step back on the practice field. I believe with what they've said already about paying Debo, about allocating money to pay Debo, if they don't go ahead and pay Debo, there's going to be hell to pay. Mark coming in at Rob. You think Lynn can bring Sermon back to life? His Melvin Gordon body type may be something nice to see. Most definitely. To me, those, picks in last year's draft that everyone is worried could be a bust. They absolutely could be. Trey Sermon, Aaron Banks could end up being poor picks. That's the risk of the draft. But to me, it is far too early for the jury to be out on that one. So I am still optimistic. I love what Trey Sermon has put out as far as his goals for next season. I do think that there can be a huge leap for a player in between years 1 and 2. Hell, at any point in someone's career, if they decide they are going to change up the way in which they approach their preparation, they can potentially change their game. All right, Sean 9519ers coming in at Rob Shoe. If you can get A-Rod early in the offseason, this is, again, back to the A-Rod theory, which Sean has laid out in its entirety on previous Sneakerhead call-in shows. If you can get A-Rod early in the offseason, then the free agents will want to come to SF, which means they are cheaper. Give Green Bay Lance and the pick for Jimmy G. Extend A-Rod for 3 years. Focus on O-line. A lot of that builds around the idea that we could get Aaron Rodgers. I just cannot see the Packers dealing him in that way. Just doesn't make too much sense from their perspective. Sean, AZ 49ers Empire, at Rob Shoe. If we cannot re-sign Mostert, what do you think about Saquon Barkley? I am not about to pay a running back that kind of money. To me, the Zeke / Saquon Barkley, throughout the league, that's basically proven to be a questionable. I mean, look at Christian McCaffrey. A questionable way to go about it. It's a shame, but the running back position has just been devalued. And I believe that Shanahan and Bobby Turner have shown the ability to consistently hit on guys in the draft. So it's just tough for me to excuse bringing in an expensive free agent like that. I realize Saquon Barkley is extremely talented. I would love to see what he could do in this offense. I just don't think it makes sense for the 49ers. All right. LA Blue 49 coming in. LeBlue. At Rob, Tom Brady, there's something to be said about having the opportunity to finish your career with your childhood team. I'm telling you, these storylines mean something, especially when you're talking about being the greatest of all time. What else does Tom Brady have to focus on at this point? Again, 1 in 100 shot. I'm not saying it's likely. Tom has to decide he's not retiring for me to even consider this to be a possibility. But for him, what other priority is there other than ensuring his legacy is intact? Ensuring the tale of Tom Brady is told in just the way he wants it to be. And the ending is a pretty freaking important thing to how a tale is told. Again, until Tom says he wants to come out of retirement, I am not touching it. As soon as he does say that, the Niners are the clear front runner in that case. Harris, at Rob, is there any chance that we make a run for Gilmore or a short-term deal for J.C. Jackson if the price is right? If the price is right, yes. But I think the price would have to be very right, like Carlos Rogers type of right. The 49ers have shown that they build first through the defensive line and then the secondary. That comes well afterward. Brian Culp, at Rob, how much longer do you think the NFL has a fullback position? As long as Kyle Juszczyk is in the league, he will dictate that the NFL maintain a fullback position. All right, I'm getting to some of the previously submitted comments, questions. Again, put yours in with at Rob or at Rob Shoe for the live comment section. I will get back to it. Getting back into these questions. Okay. All right, this is an interesting one coming in from Scott P. Why do all the players know what Trey needs to work on this offseason? Feels very specific, but no journalist does. Coming in from Scott. So this is an interesting. I think that most of the players are actually saying pretty generic things. I think most of the players are saying things that don't really apply to what Trey needs to do, but definitely apply to what Trey needs to do. Well, he's got to work, he's going to go down to Southern California and work with a throwing coach. Like that is what any young quarterback is going to do. And yes, there are a lot of stories about Trey working on his throwing motion. I've said things about that as well. I've seen some things in person that lead me to believe that he would be working on that throwing motion. But in answer to the question, I tend towards the simplest reasons to answer any question when it's unknown. I'm a big believer in Occam's razor, if you're familiar. If you're not familiar, look it up. Occam's razor, OCCAM''S, razor, RAZOR, meaning that it is typically the simplest explanation for any of these problems. And so, to me, the simplest explanation to this question is that the reason players have more of an idea of what Trey needs to work on is that they see him in practice. Journalists get extremely limited practice access, and that has been even further reduced with all of the COVID restrictions. So these are the guys that get the most eyes on Trey Lance. That's the reason that I think they know more than anyone else what he is and will be working on in the offseason. They certainly are having more conversations with him than any of the media as well. So they're the most informed. They're the people that we should be relying on for that information. Marco Merce coming in. What kind of offer would it realistically take for us to trade away Nick Bosa? Someone give us the Ricky Williams deal and I'm in. I've been thinking about Ricky Williams a little bit lately. I saw him on the Bill Maher program. He was talking about his cannabis company that he is starting. I think that he's an insightful dude, also an interesting guy, and that you can tell he very clearly suffers from some social anxieties. I can relate as someone who also deals with that at times. You may think that's strange for someone who goes live on a daily basis to have social anxieties, but I most certainly do, have dealt with them myself, and so have a soft spot in my heart for Ricky Williams. So it's funny that you bring him up. This is the package that got done. For any of you that don't remember what happened, let's see. It was Coach Ditka, Mike Ditka, fell in love. And quite literally fell in love. I mean, so much so that they did an ESPN, the magazine article in which Ricky Williams put on a freaking wedding dress and stood next to Mike Ditka as they got married after this trade happened. But anyways, Mike Ditka fell in love with Ricky Williams before the draft. The Saints held the 12th overall pick, and they ended up packaging all of that to move up to number 5. They gave up the first round pick, 12th overall, 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th, and 7th rounders, plus a first and a second from the next year's draft. Goodness gracious. After hearing that, suddenly the package for Trey doesn't look so bad. Am I right? I mean, granted, it looks better now that the Niners have officially traded the 29th pick in this draft as opposed to a much higher pick. But that was trading up for the 5th overall pick. The Niners got up to the 3rd overall pick. And again, it doesn't feel like they gave up quite that much, even though that third first rounder really does balance the scales, and the Niners gave up about that much. But saying all that, I think that anything that includes multiple first-round picks would pique the 49ers' interest. I think if you got 2 first-round picks offered for Nick Bosa and you could potentially replace him with somebody cheaper and get in another body, I think the Niners would consider it. But barring the 2 first-rounders, I just don't see it. And I don't think that anyone offers that. So I think Nick Bosa goes nowhere. I believe that the 49ers get his deal done either this offseason or the next. All right, getting back into one more before I get back into your questions. What's the point of getting a first rounder for Jimmy? Kyle and John typically draft well in the later rounds, so does it really matter? From I'm Not Faithful in the Bay. So I get this in that what's clear is for I'm Not Faithful to the Bay, the frustration of missing on first round picks is coming through in this question. The frustration of hitting on late rounders but missing early in the draft is saying, well, why should we prioritize getting these high draft picks when we don't do much with them? To me, I just have to say, all draft picks have risk. Every single draft pick has risk associated with it. Yes, the 49ers have hit on many later round prospects. They've also hit on a few early round ones. Past results are not necessarily predictive of future outcomes. However, if there is a common theme to the players that the Niners are hitting on, those later players, they do need to pay attention to that. For example, in the later round selections, if they're indeed chosen by the scouting departments more consistently and the front office and the coaching staff has more input on the earlier round selections, maybe the Niners need to consider reversing that a little bit and getting more input from the scouts on those early round picks. But all things considered, the pool of players that you're choosing from in the first round, you are much likely to hit on somebody because when you look back historically, first round talent, you're typically looking at a 50 to 60% success rate within the NFL, but it drops off in every round after that. Yes, the Niners have bucked that trend, but again, I don't think you can count on that trend going forward. You take as high of a pick as you can get and you run with it. All right, getting back into your comments in the chat. We've got Gizmo coming in with the super chat. Much appreciated. Is it fair to say that our season was affected by Jimmy's injuries, shoulder and thumb? We knew this was a problem and Trey wasn't the solution. Now what if Trey gets hurt next year? We have a plan? So I do think it's fair to assume that Jimmy's injuries played some role. I would like to think that had they played a substantial enough role that Kyle Shanahan would have considered going to Trey Lance at some point. We didn't even see him blink in that regard. So my guess is that the injuries were real, most definitely real. I would never question an injury that gets that type of play time, if you will, that type of air time as far as it being promoted as a very real injury. I'm not going to second guess that. I'm not into conspiracy theories. I go back to Occam's razor on that. A lot of people put their reputations on the line by saying it was a very real injury. That said, Jimmy, I don't think we've had any reports that he has had surgery yet. And so that could indicate that it was a little bit less than it was played out to be. My thought is that you need to go one of two routes to ensure that this doesn't happen again next season. To answer your question, Gizmo, you've got to decide either it's acceptable to lose some games when Trey gets injured. If Trey gets injured, when's a fair statement? This is the NFL. You are going to get injured. It's a question of the severity of it, how long it lasts. So at any point during the season, Trey may get injured. Do you want to have a cheap backup where you have built up the rest of the team to try and give you the best chance to win? Or have you invested in a veteran backup that costs you significantly more money, but could win you a couple of games and has the added benefit of being a mentor to Trey Lance? I'm a big believer in the role of mentorship. I'm a big believer in the positive effect that could have on Trey Lance. I'm willing to pay an additional $4 to $5 million to have a quality backup. I think $5 million, if that backup plays 2 games and wins 2 starts, you have absolutely paid for that $5 million as far as roster distribution, as far as value for that particular position. Like, forget about it. If you could win 2 games with that backup, absolutely worth the additional $5 million. To me, I'm spending the extra money and I'm trying to bring in Tyrod Taylor. That, to me, Yes. That to me is what you try to do. All right, looking for the @Rob Shoe comments before I get back into the previously submitted questions. All right, getting back into the previously submitted, I will be back into the comments. Again, hit the @Rob or @Rob Shoe, type that in before your comment so I know you are talking to me. Ooh, this one throws up, come on now. Come on, I got to put my man DJ Jones up there for this one. How certain are you that we will be able to re-sign DJ Jones and other free agents? Coming in from Josh. Not at all, Josh. I am not at all certain that the 49ers will be able to bring back all of their free agents. I do think it is their top priority. It should be. Bringing back their own should be their top priority. But some of the Niners free agents may draw considerable interest. When talking about DJ Jones specifically, I would argue in a vacuum without talking to NFL front offices, even if he gets considerable interest, to me, it's a lower dollar type of contract when you're talking about an interior run stuffing D lineman. That's not a pass rusher. It's not a cornerback. It's not a premium position within the NFL. So if it goes 20, 30% over market to pay that player, say that 5 times fast, then it's not the huge gap as it would be if it were, a bidding war for a backup quarterback where the guy's looking to get 10, 12 million a year. I think DJ Jones is probably hovering around the $4 or $5 million per year. And if he gets the higher end of that, around 5, I still think the Niners could be players in that. If the Niners want DJ Jones back, I would argue they can bring him back almost no matter what. The same cannot be said for Laken Tomlinson, who it would appear would get about double what DJ Jones would on an annual basis. Just my 2 cents on that. All right, next question coming in. What do you think of Sherman's comments regarding Stafford? All right, I'm gonna read first and foremost what was quoted in the Twitter article I pulled up. The Hall of Fame bar is incredibly low now, Richard says, like a participation trophy. No all-decade team, no all-pro, no MVP, 1 Pro Bowl. Not even MVP of the Super Bowl. Never considered the best in any year he played. At least Matt Ryan has an MVP. I mean, these are shots fired by Richard Sherman, first and foremost. Let me say that. And I think that in part of that statement, Richard Sherman makes a fair point that the bar should be high for the Pro Football Hall of Fame. This is the Hall of Fame we're talking about. It is not a participation trophy. It is intended to be for the best of the best. Where I differ from Richard Sherman is in believing that those individual accolades are distributed fairly. I don't believe that. I do not believe that MVP, the simple fact that Deebo Samuel got 0 votes for MVP, throw that goddamn award out. I don't care about it anymore. Shit. Get that out of here. If you can't get a vote for Deebo as MVP, then what is MVP? Come on. Now, the other one's a little more compelling, right? I mean, the number of Pro Bowls you've been to, typically that will even itself out when you've played in the league as long as Stafford has. The idea of making it all pro, again, that's voted on by your peers. That one has a little more to it. But I don't think Richard's argument completely applies to Matthew Stafford in this particular context. Matthew Stafford has been consistently, statistically good, if not great. But he played on some awful Detroit teams. And it's unfair not to acknowledge that absolutely played a part in him not getting voted to the Pro Bowl, in him not being all pro, right? Some of those statistical seasons deserved more of a spotlight, but he didn't get it because he was on some really bad teams. And on the teams that he was on that were great, he had someone overshadowing him in Calvin Johnson. I think it's fair to point out that he may have gotten more of those accolades that Richard is referring to if he had played elsewhere. I do believe with the addition of this Super Bowl victory that Matthew Stafford deserves consideration for the Pro Football Hall of Fame. Just my thoughts on it. All right, we got a few more previously submitted questions, but I want to get back into your live comments. So again, hit me with the @Rob Shoe, so I know you are talking to me. Like this one, USMC Niners for life. Just saying Rob. See, I read that because it said Rob. I'm just kidding. I read that because my name was in it, but I thought it was funny at the same time. Jamal Armstrong coming in. Jamal and I are trying to work out a way to get Jamal on the program here. We're going to make that happen. Tell him, Rob, Debo deserved some MVP love. Yes, he did. Yes, he damn well did, Jamal. Maybe we need to talk about that on the program when I have you on here. That's just a fact. That man deserved some of that consideration. All right, Troy coming in, one of our more recent sneakerheads. What's up, Troy? @Rob Shoe, do you believe in a media bias against our Niners? 0 votes for Bosa and Debo and the NFL awards. It's madness. I think the league doesn't like us. I definitely believe that the league has at least some moderate East Coast bias. They do love their big market teams. And San Francisco sort of gets stuck in the middle there. They are a premier franchise within the NFL, no question about it. Anytime that you have an all-decade type of an organization, as the Niners were in the 80s, certainly they were phenomenal in the 90s as well. But when you look at their dominance in the 80s, that's a franchise that will forever live in NFL history. It will ever have a vaunted place in NFL history, but when you look at premier West Coast destinations, you can tell by the way in which the NFL is prioritizing the buildings that they're throwing around the stadium down there in LA, that they want to make LA a hub for the West Coast. And then the vast majority of the other franchises are out on the East. So yes, I do think that there's some truth to that. I think it's a shame that Bosa got 0 votes for comeback player of the year. I think it's a shame that Deebo Samuel got 0 votes for MVP. If they had been on another team, if they had been on the Dallas Cowboys, do I think they would have gotten votes? Yes. Yes, I do. Yes, I do. But there are a lot of other teams that have it worse than we do. And so I don't feel too sorry for us in that regard. Not that you were asking if I feel sorry for the 49ers. Pete coming in with the super chat. Hey, Rob, McVay thinking about retiring. Russell Wilson and Kyler Murray might leave the NFC West. I think the Niners with Trey Lance can win the division. Pete, I have to agree. I have my doubts about McVay retiring. I won't believe Aaron Rodgers or Russell Wilson leave their franchises until I see it. Until I see it, I just can't believe it. It's one of those situations where I've fooled myself too many times. Fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me. So I'm just trying not to get fooled again in this regard. The Kyler Murray thing, that's some real discontent, but I do think it's posturing on both sides. I think it's contractually related. I believe they get a deal done and he stays there. But I think the maturity issues, the sulking on the sideline, the Aaron Rodgers style of behavior is very real. And it's a character flaw in the young gentleman. If he wants to become a better leader of men, he needs to work on that. It is palpable. It is visible from television, let alone if you're the dude sitting next to him on the bench. Watch Russell Wilson before one of his vaunted fourth quarter comeback drives. Watch him go around player to player and tell them as he looks them in the MFing eye, we're going to win this thing. And tell me you don't get chills down your spine as he's doing it. Tell me you don't start to believe. You're like, oh, damn, Russ about to go cook. Like, that's the type of faith you need to instill in your fellow teammates. And you don't instill that faith when your head is in your hands on the freaking bench and you're poo-pooing about the last interception that was thrown. To me, he's got incredible physical gifts. He seems like a very intelligent individual. And that attitude for Kyler is going to get him in some trouble. Like, I just don't know where kids learn that as an acceptable way of behaving as a leader in a locker room. So yes, all that to say, I do believe the Niners have a chance to win this division. I don't know that the NFC West is in as much disarray as it might appear at this particular moment in time. All right, going back a little bit because that super chat caused me to jump forward. Emiliano got my shit. Yes, indeed. Looking for those Rob Shoe comments. Sometimes they're harder to find than others. Rob Smith coming in at Rob Shoe. When can we expect for the rest of the coaching staff to be filled out? Who's the front runner for the special teams coach spot? I got to think that the front runner for the special teams is now an assistant for some other team. I have heard talk of Seattle's assistant potentially. I would have figured that we'd have some breadcrumbs by now. I would expect by the end of this week, we will have more information on the coaching staff and how the Niners are going to fill that out. That Niner guy coming in, sneakerhead on the channel. Not that Niner guy and I are trying to put together a show for this Thursday. See if we can't make that happen. At Rob Shoot, Debo was the league MVP awards about narratives, not actual play. Okay, here we go. Debo was the league MVP, period. Awards are about narratives, not actual play. Media-based awards are dumb. I mean, that's fair. There's some reality to that. I would clarify that to say more along the lines of the media-based awards are celebratory, right? That they aren't a true evaluation of player talent. I think you and I are in lockstep on agreeing on that. That they're more celebratory of the individual recognition, but not necessarily in line with who did the most on the field. It has to go with some sort of a storyline. I agree with you on that. I think that plays into it. No question. Bryant Culp at Rob, Roger Craig, Hall of Fame chances, or was it fumbled away? Bryant, that's cold-hearted that you chose those words. Cold-hearted, also funny. So I give you credit for that. Ah, man, Roger Craig deserves to be in the Hall. I got a hat right over there on the wall. It was my favorite frickin' Niners hat that I wore to the Super Bowl in 2012. Ran into Roger Craig, got him to sign it, and it quickly became my favorite hat that I no longer wore because it needed to go in the showcase. Man, it's tough. When you get beyond a certain point, it is hard to get into the Hall. But when you're on a list with you and Marshall Faulk, I mean, come on, that's a good list to be on, the 1,000 Club. Roger Craig is deserving, and I choose to believe that it will be rectified at some point. But man, if it didn't happen these last couple of years, there was a great, I believe there was someone who spearheaded the campaign. You can go read about it. It was pretty compelling to hear about someone attempting to get Roger Craig into the Hall, and it came pretty darn close. Mary Lou saying, Rob Shoe, invite me to your show. Mary Lou, become a sneakerhead and come on the call-in show. Be happy to have you on. That would be fantastic. Bryant, at Rob, will the NFL merge the kicker and punter position? I don't think so. I think those guys and their union would probably not like that change. The union wants those guys to get their due, get their money. But I don't know. The union will also like that money getting spread out to the rest of the players who are not kickers. Interesting thought. David C. at Rob Shoe, I see us stacking the team to go all in next season with Jimmy's contract off of the books. They can't have the Rams winning and not try and go all in unless Aaron Rodgers wants to come here. That's interesting, David. I mean, the Niners just don't have very many resources, big resources to take big cuts. Typically, your trade pieces would dictate big cuts via trade. Niners don't have a first rounder, so they can't do that. The most talked about compensation for Jimmy G is another second rounder. So they have a couple of second rounders they could take big swings with, but then they just don't have the free agency dollars to take those big swings. So I agree that the Niners may want to fill out this roster as best as they can to support Trey Lance. It's just a question of, do they have the correct resources where they can allocate them in such a way to take those swings? I think their best bet is some players that don't get the original free agent deals they're looking for, become value signings, and choose the 49ers because they are one of the most, if not the most talented rosters that they have the opportunity to join. to join. And so I do think the Niners could score some value, much like they did in 2011. That to me is a more likely scenario in which the Niners get some considerable talent this year. Felipe coming in at Shoe. Wilson in a recent interview said, quote, "I'm not leaving Seattle. But as a 49er fan, I hope Murray leaves, LOL." Yes, I hope they both leave. I don't think either one does. I think Kyler Murray is just doing that to get a better contract. I think it's a poor choice by him to get a better contract in that way, but I believe that's what he's doing. And I do think that Russell Wilson is going nowhere until I see it. Texas Niner at Rob Kyler is overrated. Talent-wise, I don't think he is, but complete picture, I can go with you there because now you got to evaluate the entire person. Leadership characteristics, locker room chemistry, all of that come into play. I do think it'll be interesting to look back and wonder whether Arizona should have invested that first overall pick in him or whether they should have taken Bosa. Daniel Martinez at Rob Shue and at Rob Smith. What about the Patrick Willis snub to the Hall of Fame for a second year in a row? Still feel sick about this. I think that much like Bryant Young, it may take a little while, but Patrick Willis will be in. And it's just the duration of his career. But you have guys like Terrell Davis who got in with a shortened career and set the stage for someone like Patrick Willis. He is absolutely deserving of it. Such a talented player, so high character. Man, P. Willie deserves the Hall of Fame. Tommy Hugsley with the existential question, Rob, you think I ought to swear? Tommy? No, never, Tommy, never. Yes, you should swear, Tommy. Here's my feeling on swearing. Use it sparingly. It has more effect that way. Believe me, if not for YouTube, all of you would hear me cursing considerably more than you do. I do drop regular F-bombs. I do like to curse quite a bit. YouTube doesn't like me to do so, and therefore I restrain myself. But I do agree with what I just said, which is the less you use it, the more compelling it becomes. You should use it as emphasis. Place the emphasis on the correct syllable. Tommy, that's my advice to you. Some of you may have gotten that. Some of you may have not. Daniel Martinez at Rob Shue. What about the Patrick Willis snub? He got that in already. We got that one. Daniel coming in. Daniel Garcia this time. At Rob Shue. Was the Lord Fangio consultant talks all a hoax? Haven't heard anything other than he's going to take the year off. Yeah, I was completely hornswoggled on that one, Daniel. And my apologies to anyone that heard my show and thought, damn, we're going to sign him. Because I thought, damn, we're going to sign him. I thought Lord Fangio would be back. It made so much sense to me. Jed, if you got cheap on this one and you cost us Lord Fangio coming back, then, I am irritated with you, Jed. Pony up. Get the man in the building. My hope is that when he says it's a year off and then he's going to come back as a D coordinator next year, that his intention is, well, it'll probably be the Niners with Kyle Shanahan. That would be my number one destination, assuming everything else happens, that, DeMeco Ryans has another phenomenal year and then he becomes a top coaching candidate. He gets signed and then you transition to Lord Fangio. All would be right if that occurred. Gizmo coming back in. Maybe Shanahan's offenses are flawed. It's based on cleverness and misdirection. He can't get 3rd and 1 in the clutch, and that's why he loses leads. Can't play ball control when the box is stacked. Thoughts? That's interesting. I don't think that they are, I don't think that they are majorly flawed. I do not believe that Kyle Shanahan's offenses are majorly flawed. I do think that there's something to this, Gizmo. I believe that it's a combination of factors. I do believe that Kyle Shanahan gets tight in the exact worst moments. In big games, at the fourth quarter, in the tightest moments, Kyle Shanahan tenses up, and that's not good. He tends to make some irrational decisions in there. But where I agree with this premise, Gizmo, is the idea that Kyle Shanahan's offense at times is a bit overcomplicated. that he could simplify it to some degree, and that would alleviate some concerns for him in play calling and make it easier on his offensive players as well. The incident where Jimmy Garoppolo caused a false start by not allowing Trent Williams to get set on a motion play on a quarterback sneak is an example of what I'm talking about. Jimmy Garoppolo was near perfect in picking up first downs within that amount of yardage on traditional quarterback sneaks. I believe he was perfect in that distance. And yet Kyle Shanahan felt it necessary to add motion to the play. It was that motion that pushed the 49ers back 5 yards. I think those types of things could be simplified within the offense. I also believed Kyle Shanahan needed someone fresh blood to be brought in. My hope is that in bringing in Anthony Lynn, that accomplished that fact. All right, I'm going to get to some of these previously submitted questions, then come back to your freaking questions here. I just want to see if I missed out on any piece of Gizmo's question, because that was a good one. I also think personnel have something to do with it. Kyle Shanahan leans on personnel that he trusts. We got down to the end of the year, and the only back he frickin' trusted was Elijah Mitchell and Debo, but he's a wide back, not a running back. And so that was a critical error on his part. He needed to develop someone else he could have turned to. Jeff Wilson Jr., Trey Sermon, somebody else with rested legs had to be able to come in to get a frickin' yard. Oh, man, it's tough. It's tough. All right. Getting back to a previously submitted question. Here we go. Rich M coming in. Besides trading Garoppolo, what is the Niners' biggest offseason need? To me, this goes back to the Niners re-signing their own players. And yes, that means I'm going to put DJ Jones back on the screen. DJ Jones, and the barbecue sauce. DJ Jones, number 1. Laken Tomlinson, number 2. Surprise, number 3 for me, but you may have heard it on a previous program, Raheem Mostert. To me, when healthy, no one else makes the run game go like Raheem Mostert makes the run game go. The next biggest decision for me would be backup quarterback. And again, I go back to what I talked about earlier. Do you prioritize spending more to ensure that you get a quality backup capable of winning some games, Tyrod Taylor type, $10 million plus per year as a base salary, most likely? Or do you go cheap and try to bolster the roster around Trey for a Super Bowl run? Go with somebody who's, a step above Nate Sudfeld. For me, I am going the Tyrod Taylor route. I spend the extra money. I think that backup quarterback position is important to the San Francisco 49ers. And I think there's a likelihood that that quarterback does start a game or two. And the Niners need to win those games. Ron E. Niner came in with, a little clever one, taking a shot at Mr. Montana, which, I forgive you for that, Ron E. Niner. But he says, what is Uncle Joe smoking in regard to Joe Montana's comments about Trey Lance? My guess is some kind of a sativa, definitely something psychoactive. Because he was out there. He was out there. Let me tell you. No, this is an odd one to me. I don't understand why Joe felt he needed to say the things that he did. I guess they're his honest opinion, and I guess he just doesn't care that he can see it reflecting negatively on Trey Lance. He can see it reflecting negatively on the organization, and it just doesn't bother him to put that out there. I think what it illustrates for me is that Joe Montana still does have a little bit of irritation at the organization. I believe it pops up anytime he's unwilling to admit that the Niners are his favorite franchise, like when the Niners played the Chiefs in the Super Bowl and Joe put out the jersey that was half Chiefs, half Niners. To me, it's clear where your allegiance should lie if you're Joe Montana. Your legend was created in San Francisco. It lives in San Francisco. But I think he still harbors some resentment about the trade that went down and about the Niners choosing Steve Young over Joe Montana. Now, Eddie DeBartolo came in at the last minute and attempted to say, Joe, you can stay. You can be the starter. But it was too late. Too little, too late. And I think the bottom line for Joe is he carries some of that resentment with him to this day. Joe, I encourage you, let it go, my friend. The Niners are where your legend exists. It's where your legend resides. And if you embrace that, it would help to grow the legend of Joe Montana. And that legend deserves to be grown, Joe. Yes, it does. last one before ending on your live comments. What do you see the 49ers running backs being for the 2022 season? Mitchell is a lock. I suppose Sermon is too. Debo, sort of. Do they re-sign Mostert, Wilson, draft, free agency? Obadiah coming in with that question, and I love it. I think it's a good one. I would say, I agree. Mitchell and Sermon are locks. So that's 2 of the 4 locked down. I think to fill out the rest, it's likely that they bring back either Jeff Wilson Jr. and or JaMychal Hasty. They could bring back both. I think it's more likely that they bring back one, and my guess is Jeff Wilson Jr. Mostert may get poached, but if he isn't, if it isn't money related, I say he's back. If he doesn't get swooped up by Miami, I think Mostert is that 4th back. I see it as follows. Mitchell, Mostert, Sermon, and Jeff Wilson Jr. in that order for the 4 on the squad. Mostert becomes your 3rd down back that you're attempting to get 10 carries a game to. Elijah Mitchell is that 15 to 17 carry a game guy. And then you're filling in with Sermon and Jeff Wilson Jr. as needed to provide some spells for the other guys or upon injury. On the practice squad, I'm guessing you could keep JaMychal Hasty there, and I would add a 7th rounder or undrafted free agent as well. The Niners just need to keep bringing in fresh legs just in case. I mean, we started with 4 or 5 quality backs this year, and quickly we're down to 3. So you got to stock up at that position. It's very critical to the 49ers offense. All right, getting back into your comments to close out, talking to all of you. Texas Niner sneakerhead on the channel. At Rob, talent-wise for Kyler, did you see the sack, safety, INT, pick 6 in the playoffs? Only Kyler can pull that off. I saw what got me was the no sack. When he got like touched by Aaron Donald and like jumped onto his side, I was like, ooh, Kyler has checked out of this game. Kyler just wants to make a business decision here. Yeah, it was interesting to watch him against the Rams in the playoffs. Mark coming in at Rob, your cursing is like an anomaly, LOL. I know, because when my true self comes through, the cursing comes out. But I'm very conscious of it because of YouTube and their guidelines. And so I try to keep it out. I've had plenty of corporate jobs too, where I speak publicly. And most of those, it's frowned upon, right? You can curse for emphasis, but you're generally not supposed to. So I'm good at controlling it. Every now and then it just pops through. The occasional F-bomb, can't help it. YOLO bro. Coming in at Rob Shue. Can the Niners hire offensive line coach Ed Warner? He's had success at the college level. He helped start the careers of Corey Linsley and Taylor Decker out of Ohio State. I got to admit, YOLO bro, I am not familiar with that offensive line coach, but certainly I am all for bringing in talented coaches to the San Francisco 49ers, and they could use someone that helps them develop talent at that position. I can't think of the 49ers developing a whole lot of talent there. All right, Bryant with the either or question. At Rob, who gets in the Hall of Fame first, Patrick Willis or Roger Craig? I got to say P. Willie. I think he gets in within the next 2 years. That's my vote. That's my guess. NYCE 1030 at Rob Shue. I think we have to give credit to Kyle and John for not going all in. And it proves that they can build a Super Bowl roster through the draft, and proving, not going all in, and proving that they can build a Super Bowl roster through the draft. I'm looking to see what our rookie defensive backs look like next year. I agree. I am very appreciative of the style with which the 49ers have built this roster. I think it's very sustainable. I believe they will be good for many years consecutively, and I place value in being good for many years consecutively. I also place values in adding to the trophies in the trophy case, but I would rather do that over a period of time, as the Niners are doing. Rob Smith, at Rob Shue, do you think George Seifert should be in the Hall of Fame? That's a tough one. I mean, part of me wants to say yes, because his defenses were phenomenal, but he just didn't have the type of sustained success in then going on to Carolina. He would be a fringe coach, I think, at best. I would need to look at the pool of modern day coaches that we're holding him up against, but to me, it wouldn't be a lock. He deserves consideration, is what I will say. E. Kim, at Rob, star to elite quarterbacks win Super Bowls. Jimmy isn't that, and prove that. Yes, aside from the one-off scenarios of the Brad Johnsons of the world, the Trent Dilfers of the world, generally it is good to elite quarterbacks, great to elite quarterbacks. I do think Jimmy qualifies as good, and I think he's borderline good enough with enough around him to be on a team that wins the Super Bowl. Certainly not going to be, in my mind, the reason that the team actually wins the Super Bowl. E. Kim, I got to bring you back in for this one because of the fact that I've spoken to it and wanted to speak to it again. Stop re-signing perpetually injured players. This is in response to, I'm guessing, Raheem Mostert and bringing him in. I agree, except when it is exceptional talent filling out a particular position group. So if you have Trey Sermon, Jeff Wilson Jr., and Elijah Mitchell as 3 out of 4 running backs, to me, it doesn't really matter who that fourth back is. Could be JaMychal Hasty. How much value is JaMychal Hasty adding to this roster? I would argue not very much. However, Raheem Mostert could be that fourth. And if healthy, Raheem Mostert adds a lot of value to this roster. And so, depending on the money difference between what you would need to pay JaMychal Hasty and what you would need to pay Raheem Mostert on a 1-year prove-it deal, I would go the Raheem Mostert route, because the fourth guy on the roster is probably going to end up on your practice squad anyway. JaMychal Hasty's probably ending up on the practice squad. If Raheem Mostert gets injured, all you lost was the money that you put up. And on a 1-year prove-it deal, that's not a lot of money. Now you sign up Hasty from the practice squad, right? I mean, we had all this debate about Wayne Gallman and how when the Niners weren't able to add him as the fourth running back on the roster, how that was a real loss. He didn't end up on a roster mid-season, right? I mean, he was on an atrocious roster to begin the season, but then fell off. So again, I just don't think that fourth spot on a running back position group, on your cornerbacks, if you're talking about the fifth cornerback on the roster, and that could be Jason Verrett, I think that we have been scarred by these injury issues. But this past year, we didn't have those injury issues. Even with Verrett and Mostert going out week 1, the Niners were not one of the most injury-riddled teams in the league. We were not. But we feel like we were because we have PTSD. So I think that's our issue, E. Kim. I don't think it's a roster issue so much anymore. Tommy Huxley, at Rob Shue, you didn't see Back to the Future? Yes, goddammit, George. Swear. I have seen Back to the Future, but I'm not sure the reference with regard to who you are. I mean, I'm guessing that you're talking about George McFly, but I can't think of a line where they talk about swearing in that. I am amused by PG-13 and what it meant back in the 80s versus what it means now. Go back and watch a PG-13 freaking movie like Back to the Future and watch what they get away with. I love it. I love it. We should be able to curse more. We should be able to curse considerably more. Rob Smith coming in with the super chat, at Rob Shue. Rob, thank you for answering my questions tonight. It's been a fun show. Have a great evening and go Niners. Rob Smith, cheers to you. Thank you for coming in. Thank you for participating in the dialogue. I love it. And that's the last of my water. So a couple more questions and then we will have to go because I'm out of my water. And there's too much. I mean, there's a little water left in this mug, which I like that mug. This is a dope mug. But, after it's been sitting out in the room, there's a little bit of dust on the top of the water. I don't think I want that water. I think I need to dump that out and get some fresh water in there. All right. Ryan Starr. I haven't brought in anything from Ryan Starr yet. At Rob Shue. I don't agree the offense is flawed. Imagine Kyle toss pitch zone scheme not having to block the backside linebacker DN because he has to account for Trey coming out the back door. I don't know that completely addresses the idea of an overcomplicated offense and what that can do to the players involved running it. I agree that Kyle's offense is not inherently flawed. I think Kyle's offense is genius. And I think it might benefit from some simplification as well. Same core concepts, just pare it down a little bit. In particular, in those tight moments, pare it down, make it easier on folks. That Niner guy throwing out at Rob Shu. Did you see the Eagles are currently interested in Jimmy G? That one shocked me a bit, but could all be noise. What do you think? I agree. I was shocked by it. The idea of considering Jimmy G over their current quarterback. Why am I blanking on his name? I just can't see it. To me, you have a talented young quarterback who's a mobile quarterback. I would absolutely stick with the gentleman who I can't even remember his name at this particular point in time, but I would stick with that gentleman over Jimmy Garoppolo. To me, some of these rumors coming out are just smoke. There's not going to be fire, but hey, you never know. Why can't I remember Philadelphia Eagles? And we are going to go with their roster here. Jalen Hurts. As I was searching it, it came up to me. I just found it as well on Google. Jalen Hurts, indeed. I would stick with Jalen Hurts if I am the Philadelphia Eagles, but that's just me. Pete coming in at Rob. Are you only an NFL fan or do you watch other sports too? I definitely watch NBA. I'm a Blazers fan here in Portland. Major League Baseball, I watch in the playoffs and I participate on the fantasy level. Hockey, I do not, although I've been to games and find that to be a highly entertaining way of viewing the sport. E. Kim coming back talking about those injured players. Rob, I appreciate Mostert and Verrett, but those spots should be for younger players that can be developed, and the 53-man roster spots are valuable. They are, but remember, the Niners have to fill 20 spots, at least, probably 22 spots on the roster. 10 of those are going to be draft picks. They can't afford 12 free agents. There are going to be some spots that need to go to cheaper players, and again, if Mostert is one of those cheaper players, to me, that's a lock. George coming in at Rob. I want to get a Debo jersey, but every time I've gotten a player, the next year they've left our team. Cap first, then the next season, Carlos Hyde. Maybe I should get a Josh Norman jersey. Yeah, let me just say, please don't get a Debo jersey in this case because we don't want that trend. No, I think that this could be the way in which you buck that trend because Debo's going to get paid and Debo is going to stick around. So I say, if you're in the market for a frickin' jersey, if you're in the market, get the Debo jersey. Do it. Do it. Do it. Do it. Do it. McFly. Anyone home, McFly? Yes, we are going back to the future references here. E. Kim. At Rob, the Rams won the Super Bowl and enjoy the spoils. Isn't it the point to play and win a championship? Yes, absolutely the point to win a championship. Couldn't dispute that. That Niner guy at Rob Shu, B2TF line, Back to the Future line. Hey, you, get your damn hands off her. Yes. Hey, you, get your damn hands off her is a great line that McFly issues while he's, hey, you, get your damn hands off her with that shaky voice of his. Man, great movie. I could go with movie quotes. Should we just change the channel from Niners content to old movie references? Because I freaking love old movie references. Absolutely love it. Joshua Braidhorst coming in at Rob. What if the rumors are true? Brady comes out of retirement as a quarterback's coach. Hey, we could use a quarterback coach. J10 coming in at Rob. Would you trade Damian Miller for a bunch of stuff? Damian Miller. Who are we talking about with Damian Miller? The baseball player? I don't know. I don't know if I would trade Damian Miller for a lot of stuff. I don't know enough about Damian Miller. Bro Montana coming in with the super chat at Rob. We should curse more LOL. Keep up the good work. Bro Montana in the house. Bro Montana, welcome. And just for you, shit. Indeed. All right, we're going out on a couple last one here. George and Rafa coming in. I see the @Robs there. @Rob, we need to have random live chats. People love hearing your opinions, and the voice is perfect. I tell you what, we'll do a couple episodes where it's just ask Rob whatever the hell you want to ask Rob. And maybe I can figure out a way to turn off the advertisements on a couple of programs so I could just drop F-bomb after F-bomb after F-bomb and not get my channel in any trouble. And then you could see the other side of Rob's shoe. Then you could get that other version that people may be craving to just get a little bit more Rob. People would probably be like, Rob, that's too much. That is too much Rob. Dial it back. Dial back the Rob. We want the PG-13 version of Rob again. That's what you be saying after too long. After not too long. Rafa coming in @Rob. Have you ever been to Lumen Field? I'm thinking about catching a Seattle versus SF game next year. I don't know when it turned to Lumen Field, but yes, I have been to CenturyLink several times. Lumen now. I want to say I've been there 7 or 8 times. I was there. The most memorable experience there was a negative one, unfortunately. And that was the NFC Championship game wherein Michael Crabtree was unable to come down with that ball because of Richard Sherman and that tip. But I was also there for the Dre Greenlaw stop in 2019. So that's a more recent memory. Although, if I'm honest, the one with Crabtree and Sherman sticks out more. That was a painful one. Sat at the 50-yard line. Great seat. Had rich people throwing peanuts at the back of my head. Always love it when rich people act a fool. Had a lot of people taunting me on my way out of the stadium. I never forgot that. I will never completely forgive the Seattle fan base for the way in which I was treated at that game. I would never treat an opposing fan in the way in which I was treated at that freaking game. So I would just say to you, if you're going to that field, just know that you may get treated slightly poorly. I'm not trying to disparage the 12s and the Seattle fan base, but in my opinion, in my experience, in the 18 or so stadiums that I have been to so far, that's the worst I have ever been treated, is in Seattle. Just my experience. LOL, you thought coming in to clarify. I think you're right here. I think he means Dame from the Blazers. LOL. In that case, no, I would not trade Dame. And hence why I'm a big believer in you don't have to win championships for it to be a successful season, because I've got to back that up with the NBA. Ooh, Brad Jones @Rob. Steve Smith Sr., new wide receiver coach. I haven't seen any mention of that. I would be all over that. All over that. I like Steve Smith Sr. A lot of attitude. Bro Montana coming in. Nice. Yes, it was. George says we need the Dark Rob shoe. Wait till they get a load of me. Neil coming in @Rob. Love the show, Rob. Are you planning to go to the Atlanta and Carolina games next season? And would picking up Cordarrelle Patterson and Stephon Gilmore be great pickups? I would love either one of those players. I don't think they're going to be inexpensive enough for the San Francisco 49ers to sign either of them. Yes, I will be at the Atlanta game. I cannot wait to go to that Mercedes-Benz frickin' dome. It looks to me to be one of the best new stadiums out there. I loved Minnesota. I was pretty impressed by LA's stadium as well. I got to give it to them. I'm really excited about Atlanta. I'm looking at 4 road games next year. I'm looking at Chicago, Atlanta. Where the hell else was I going? Denver was another one. Chicago, Atlanta, Denver. I don't remember where the other one was. I do not remember. Man, I got to look it up now. I got to look it up. Let's see. 49ers schedule 2022. Of course. Yeah, Long Beach State. That's who I want. Long Beach frickin' State. No, I want the San Francisco 49ers schedule, please. All right, here we go. Future opponents, away games. Oh, Las Vegas. Las Vegas. Yes, I'm very excited to go to Las Vegas. So those are the 4 I am going to. J-Tan, yes, Dame Dollar is what he was looking for. Nope, I would keep Dame Dollar and not trade that man. A. Stanley, I'm supposed to be cleaning and I'm stuck to my phone because Rob's shoe is on. A. Stanley, I'm sorry about that. I am sorry. Get back to that cleaning. I'm putting off some cleaning myself. Julio coming in just to say Rob's the GOAT. Daniel Garcia at Rob Shoe. What's your non-Niners free agent wish list? Tyrod Taylor is on there. Ooh, that's a good one. I got to get into it. Right now, it's all Niners and Tyrod Taylor. But I will build that out. That's a great question, Daniel, and I'll have a better answer for you coming up. Fazil also believes I'm the GOAT. Above Joe Montana. What can I say? Vicky, Sneakerhead here on the channel coming in. I view Kyle as an excellent offensive coordinator, but not sure he has the chops to win a Super Bowl as a head coach. Vicky, I think that's fair to speculate about. He has shown the propensity to grow tight in those very critical situations. I get your skepticism. I think he can grow in that area. That's my belief, that he can grow into that. Brad Jones pointing out there's no rumor about Steve Smith, just a thought. Also, what's up from Australia? What's up from down under, Brad? Welcome to the channel. Just about to end the program. I'm going to say this. Hey, if you enjoy the content, please consider hitting the like button down below. It really does help me amplify my message. It's the off season. It's hard to get views on videos. When you like the video, when you subscribe to the channel, when you comment on the video, below the video on my page, all those things help. So I always put it out there asking for your assistance if you enjoy the content. Gizmo coming in. At least we beat the Cowboys and made them cry. We beat the Cowboys and the Packers. Freaking great season. That experience at Lambeau was epic for me. Epic. Putting in that freaking pin was meaningful to me. Very meaningful. Very, very meaningful. I will cherish it. George, at Rob, how many more stadiums do you need to mark off on your map? I think it's like 14. I've been to more than half of the stadiums, but some of them are Candlestick Park, LA Coliseum, Oakland Coliseum. Like a lot of the ones I've been to now are no longer stadiums, so they become duplicates, and I don't count that. So I think I have about 14 to 16 stadiums left. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. 17 by that count. But one of those I've already checked off. I just haven't put the pin in the map. So 16. 16 remaining. Maybe 17 because I don't think there's a spot for Vegas on there. So still a little over half. A little over half. We got to make that under half this season. A. Stanley saying, I would love to meet you at the Atlanta game, Rob. A. Stanley, if you're there, we will make that happen. Fazil, yes, Vegas. Vegas is where it is at. That's what I was trying to remember. E. Kim pointing out at Rob, food and drink in the Atlanta Stadium is inexpensive. I've been to an event there last year. $2.50 for a hot dog, $5 for a beer. An owner that gets it. Indeed. Neil saying, hey, Rob Shoe, yes, sir. Hope to meet you in Atlanta. Looking forward to it, Neil. I have had a blast meeting people at games. At the LA game, I had 4 freaking people come up to me and say what's up, and I loved it. Absolutely loved it. NYC 1030. At Rob Shoe, when you're in Atlanta, let me know so we can grab a few drinks. I'm definitely going to the Atlanta game since I live here. We will make that happen. It sounds like there's going to be a group of us at that Atlanta button. Melvin doing the good work, asking people to smash the like button. I appreciate it. Luke Luna, a member here of the channel, one of my favorites. You know that. At Rob Shoe, tattooing and listening. You know the vibe. Yes, sir. We got to make this happen. I got some old work that I need updated. We got to make some tattoo work happen, Luke. We can't televise it though. I don't want my pain-stricken face on video. Ellis 10 at Rob Shoe. Glad to see your show getting stronger. I love it. Me too. Me too. Alan at Rob. Have a good evening. You too, Alan. Ashley coming in at Rob. Maybe missed it because I came in late, but what do you make of Debo seemingly not being very excited for Trey? Jimmy leaving. I understand they're friends, but seems like it sucks for Trey too. I don't make much of that. I think that the respect that's being paid right now is being paid to Jimmy Garoppolo, And I think that is just that. It's respect for Jimmy Garoppolo. It is not about something reflecting poorly on Trey Lance. I think you'll start to see players having great things to say about Lance. I think you're already seeing that. You saw Fred Warner say that. You've seen players come out. Brandon Ayuk has definitely said some positive things there. So I believe that you will begin to see more and more about Trey Lance as it comes out. I think what you're hearing from players is the farewell tour for Jimmy Garoppolo, and he deserves it. Tip of the cap, hats off to Jimmy Garoppolo. I'm going to go out on that note. I'm going to go out on the note that I believe he deserves the respect on the way out the building. He gets my nod of respect, and I'm excited for Trey Lance. I'm excited to bring in the young gentleman and give him his shot, a legitimate shot, by building out the rest of this roster correctly. We're going to do it. All right, I will be back on tomorrow night between two beards with Randon McMahon at 5 p.m. here on the channel. Until then, you know the deal. Cheers, Niner faithful.